Well, hi everybody, and welcome to episode number 21 of the 77 Groups series on effective communication and effective leadership. And as you can probably tell, I left the confines of my home office and I'm here in New York, in Flushing at Citi Field, a home of the world's greatest baseball team, the New York Mets. I'm sitting here. I figured that this presentation was going to be so important that I wanted about 40,000 people out in the audience rather than just one, Mitch. So that's what we're doing. In any event, the topic for this episode is called Probe When Appropriate. It covers chapter 11 in my book, 77 Ways to Perfect Your Communication Skills, Enhancing Your Personal and Professional Relationships, and one of my favorite topics. Mitch, what do you got to say today?
Well, just a brief overview of what we are doing here together. As many of you know by now, here in episode 21, Frank and I make up the 77 group. And here on our YouTube channel, we like to share bits and pieces of chapters of our book, from effective communication, as Frank is an expert on, to effective leadership that I'm always happy to speak on. And we know that those two go together so strategically well to be effective in either of those areas or a combination of the two. So we bring this together every week here on our YouTube channel. And Frank mentioned his book, and you'll see the title over screen, 77 Ways to Perfect Your Communication Skills, Enhancing Your Personal and Professional Relationships. By the way, that's available right now at our website, 77grp.com. Just go to the bookshelf, pick up your copy, available in hardcover, softcover, audio, ebook, and any platform. It's available for you right now. And you can also flip on over to Amazon, pick it up real quick. So plenty of ways to get your hands on it. And later this year, my book, 77 Principles, Tips, and Takeaways for Exceptional Leaders, will be available for your consumption. And together we believe that if you use the book on its own, or if you use our YouTube channel content on its own, great. We think you're going to be ahead of the game. But if you use the two together, you get the full scope of both topics, along with our interaction with you. And then you'll really be, we think, out in front of the competition. Also, we ask, as you're watching this, by the way, we thank you for viewing. Our subscriber base is well over 400 now, so keep it coming and tell your friends, and be sure to let them know to subscribe so they don't miss any of this stuff. And of course, if you like what you see, let us know. Hit that little like button at the bottom of the screen and send us your questions, because each week we address those questions in the comments, and we will pick the question of the week and reward that viewer with a free phone call, 15, 20 minutes to talk about the subject matter or anything else that's on your mind. So join us each week here on YouTube. And with that, for today's topic, probe when appropriate, I send it back to our communication expert, my partner, Frank Leone. Frank, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Mitch. Again, this is episode number 21. It's called Probe When Appropriate, and really one of my favorite topics, and I think one of the most sort of undervalued but most important aspects of being an effective communicator. Probing basically tells us that far too often we get information that is lacking in sufficient specificity, that there's something more that the other party has to share and they're not sharing it. A person that does not probe misses multiple opportunities to really get to the heart of matters. A person that learns to probe effectively gets to the heart of matters. So it's a very, very important differentiation between being an average communicator and being an effective communicator. And probing really does reach across all sorts of professions and personal relationships. Think about it. A physician, and that was my professional career. That was the clientele that I served. A good physician really has to be a good prober. They have to get into the specifics of what the individual is experiencing and what may have been some of the contributing factors. An attorney If you're a trial attorney, probing is the hard. If you're a sales professional, and there's a lot of them out there, either explicitly or implicitly, it's very, very important to get the details from the prospect, from the potential buyer. And in order to really understand their needs, you usually have to probe effectively. At a personal level, almost any personal relationship is greatly enhanced if you can learn how to probe, whether it's with a spouse, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a professional colleague, whether it is with an offspring. Learning to get to that next level of specificity is really important. So what I want to share today is some specific tips for becoming a better prober. And remember that the heart and soul of what we do here is give 5 tips for every session, 5 takeaways that you can take with you and apply. The hope is that once each of us are done with 77 different presentations, that, by the way, is 370 different tips apiece that we're offering, that will give you a bank of things that you can draw of an inventory to really become both an more effective communicator as well as a more effective leader. So, Mitch, you ready for tip number 1?
Hit it. Let's hear it.
Okay. Let's go for tip number 1. Tip number 1 is in conversation with another party. Always, both literally and figuratively, sit on the edge of your chair, looking for words or expressions that might suggest that a probe would be appropriate. In other words, part of being a good listener is being able to constantly look for, aha, here is something that I can probe to get greater specificity. So tip number 1, sit on the edge of your chair, looking for any opportunities that may come along.
Excellent point. And again, it shows respect when you're paying attention to the person that's talking, and it helps you expand and give them the opportunity to expand on their message. Great tip, Frank. What do you have for number 2?
Tip number 2 is look for trigger words. There are as an avid prober, there are words that I look for all of the time, usually germane to my profession or the kind of discourse that I have with other people, but words that I hear all the time that beg for a probe. One would be the word problem. I don't want somebody to tell me they have a problem. I want to find out, what is that problem? Tell me about that problem. Tell me more. I'm unhappy. Why are you unhappy? I'm concerned. Why are you concerned? I'm upset. Why are you upset? I need more. Tell me more about what you need and why you need it, et cetera, et cetera. So there really is trigger words that after a while immediately trigger a probe action by yourself. And I think that's very important as well. Tip number 2, look for classic trigger words.
And I think also, as you describe words that refer to a problem, does it make sense also to probe a little further on words that reflect something really good, like this really made me happy, or this really helped us be successful, or something along that line?
That's an excellent point. I couldn't agree more. Anything that would suggest that there may be something below the surface that'll really reveal what the other party is thinking, how they feel, or what they want, falls in the category of probability.
Got it. Yeah, and I think I think you just nailed the key there, at least for me to relate to, is anything that might reveal something below the surface is worth probing. So excellent point. So tip number 3, what do you got, Frank?
Tip number 3 is develop a library of classic probe questions. We talked about the library of words that you're looking for in order to probe. But when you do probe, there's little phrases that are excellent ways to probe. An example would be, well, tell me more. Could you elaborate on that? Things of that sort. You want to basically have those. Could you add a little more specificity? What do you really mean by that? A phrase and a series of phrases that you're comfortable with should be immediately the ones that you use all the time. And I think that you want to, I don't think, I'm confident that you can frame them in a way that always shows respect. Like, you don't want to say, tell me more. You say, interesting point. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Or I see, that could really tell me a lot. Explain that, etc. So that's where we want to go with tip number 3. Develop a library of classic probe questions.
Excellent. And like you say, also to set up those questions with something positive, like, oh, you make an interesting point, that kind of a thing. You're now validating the person you're speaking to, and it's a lot less threatening than just the, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Where it might sound like you're being critical. So excellent points and sub-points with that one. What about your next tip, Frank? What do you have?
Tip number 4 is do not stop probing until you reach the finish line. And what I mean by that is you may probe and you may get a response, and really that response, although it may help you get greater specificity, also begs for further specificity. So you want to keep on digging until you felt you've gotten to pay dirt. So almost think of it as ground, and you give them a shovel with that first probe, and they shovel, and you got a little bit of information out of it, but you want to give them the shovel back and say, well, dig a little bit deeper. Well, tell me more. That's interesting. It's interesting that you feel that way. Explain, what got you there? Why did you feel that way? Why do you think that? Et cetera, et cetera. I love the word why. That really tells me a lot when I'm communicating with people. I don't want to know just the what. I don't want to know just how they're feeling. I don't want to know just what they're thinking. I want to know why they're thinking it. So getting the word why in a lot of your probes is a useful way to go as well.
Yeah, again, great, excellent points. And one of my favorite questions is, well, why did you come to that conclusion, or what made you think like that when I'm talking to people? And again, like you said, whatever leaves you to believe there's something else below the surface, yeah, keep probing. Excellent point. All right, so bring it home. What do you have for tip number 5 today, Frank?
Speaking about bringing it home, Pete Alonso just hit another home run. The Mets are ahead 8-0 now. What a game!
Back there.
What a game! And and I'm hearing actually more people are paying attention to what I'm saying in the stadium than they are to the game. Look at that! Look at these people are my audience. So
that's right.
I'm as a native New Yorker, I feel I've had a happy homecoming here.
And one of the smaller crowds you've actually spoke to. So
minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so tip number 5, the last tip, is do not be afraid to interrupt. And I think that's a very important point as well, because one of the things that I covered in recent weeks was to try not to interrupt, even when people are going on and on. Give them that opportunity. Don't always be interrupting people. Don't talk over people. Not so when it comes to probing. When it comes to probing, you have to jump in. You may want to say, excuse me, or pardon me, or sorry to interrupt, but you can't let the moment go by. You can't say that a minute and a half ago you said something that I would like further specificity on. So when you're on that edge of your proverbial and actual chair and here's something that you want to probe on, forget the rule about don't interrupt. Interrupt, jump in, find out. That's the only way that you can really hit pay dirt, especially if you're communicating in a situation where you need to extract information. Like that physician with the patient, like that trial attorney, like that sales professional, like that parent or spouse that is dealing with a critical issue at home.
Excellent. Yeah, and again, very appropriately, very, very, very friendly, I guess, gently to interrupt, strike while the iron's hot, and extract that additional information. Great tips. 5 again. 5 for 5 there at Citi Field for Frank. Good job again, Frank, as always. And I think at this time, I'd like to give Frank an opportunity to give us those 5 tips one more time. We'll scroll them on the screen for you. So Frank, go ahead and rewind it for us.
Okay, tip number one, sit on the edge of your chair looking for opportunities. Tip number two is look for trigger words. Tip number three is develop a library of classic probe questions. Tip number four is do not stop probing until you hit the finish line. And tip number five is do not be afraid to interrupt.
Folks, you are certainly getting your money's worth today, as well as everybody at Citi Field. Great job again, as always, Frank. And as we begin to wind down our 21st episode here on the 77 Group, let me just remind you all that next week's topic, which will actually this topic today will post on a Sunday here in the next couple of weeks. And also next week's topic, I'm going to be talking about leadership and the very delicate diplomacy needed to understand when to step in, when not to step in when things are going on with your team. Also, we remind you to subscribe, tell your friends so they can subscribe, leave a comment, like us if you like what we're doing, and be sure to leave a comment or a question, because we'll reward those questions each and every week. And with that, let me kick it back to Frank for this week's winner, question of the week. Frank.
Okay, well, we did get another good question. Here it is. Well, let me see if I can. What happened to it? Well, it's not showing up real well. There we go. You got to be outdoors like this a little bit. There we go.
There you go.
So here's the question of the week. It comes from Brittany S. And it's from episode 13, a few episodes ago, that was entitled Do Not Interrupt. And Brittany's question is, my boyfriend never stops talking. What can I do? Brittany's question, my boyfriend never stops talking. What can I do? Well, I put a lot of thought in this. I wanted to give Brittany a really good answer. And my answer is find a new boyfriend, Brittany.
Sage advice.
That's it.
Yep. Pay attention, Brittany. Run. Find a new boyfriend. Good job. Okay. So also, everyone, we like to end each session with a very thoughtful and appropriate closing thought. Today is Frank's turn. So go ahead, Frank. What are you going to leave us with today?
Very simply, my personal thought for this week, and again, Mitch and I really enjoy sharing some personal thoughts briefly at the end of each presentation. My personal thought for this week is do not stress on the little things in life. There are so many things that you can stress on, and every second that you spend stressing on something is a second that you're not going to have to enjoy all the wonders of life. So try to keep issues in perspective and don't stress on them, and just get by them. You know what? I've stressed on 10,000 issues in my life, and somehow none of them are really affecting me right now. So you get through everything. So again, my personal thought for the week is do not stress on the little things.
Excellent. Excellent point. And, you're so right. The things we get worked up over in the end are, certainly not catastrophic and something that we forget about very shortly. Always great advice, always great tips. Thank you so much, Frank. It's my great privilege and pleasure to be a part of this with you. And with that, folks, we are at the end of episode 21. And so stay tuned. Next week, episode 22 coming your way. And just on behalf of my partner, Frank Leone, and myself, my name is Mitch Goddard, and we are the 77 Group. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody. See you next week.